This is Histories and Mysteries Uncovered. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jessica. And on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the murder of Warren Barnes.
Yes.
And I will be talking about a pirate captain called Madame Cheng.
Nice.
Or Madame Cheng. I don't know why I said Madame, but
Madame.
she was a badass.
That's awesome. I'm excited because my guy is not a badass. Not
Okay.
Warren.
I was going to say,
no, Warren is a sweet, sweet little angel of a man.
Oh, good.
But
But
Brian is not good.
Is this the one you were telling me about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
It's insane.
I don't want to hear it.
It's bad.
Can I opt out this week?
No.
Can I use my skip?
Trigger warning for mutilation.
Amazing. Okay.
It's post-mortem, so thankfully he didn't feel it, but it's pretty awful.
Okay. And the suspect is how old? Or not the suspect, but the
Murderer?
Yeah.
19.
Yeah.
He's actually, if you guys have seen it, there's a viral video out, and I have the 911 call in here. I
just saw it on TikTok the other day.
Yeah, I found this amazing. So someone called it a podcast, but it was definitely a really well done documentary that I watched on YouTube. And it was Explore With Us is the name of the people that did this documentary. It was so good. I highly recommend it. It's an hour and 42 minutes. And I highly recommend you watching it because they had video of his police interrogation. They have the body cam videos from the police.
Wow.
And they have people like psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, other people like that watch it. And so they have a lot of psychological insight that they put into this documentary. So it really, they kind of like stop and talk about things that I maybe wouldn't have thought of that are just really interesting. So I highly, highly recommend Explore With Us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. And they've got one of those, like the Forensic Files guy voice, like the deep, like, blah, 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 blah. That's the voice that was on the documentary.
Nice.
Yeah.
That really draws you in.
It does. It does. It was so well done. And then I also got from the Daily Sentinel and the Colorado Sun.
Okay.
So February 28th, 2021 in Grand Junction, Colorado, which, by the way, I asked Cody about Grand Junction, Colorado, and he said he has been there and it is absolutely gorgeous. He said it's just a beautiful place. I don't know why I added that in here, but I did.
So why did you just randomly ask him about
I was like, oh, because Cody's from Colorado.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry. I probably should have mentioned that to make more sense. Cody's from Colorado, my husband.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah. I was like, that's really random. It's so random.
He's from Aurora, Colorado, which is actually where if you remember the shooting in the movie theater of the Batman movie.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. He lost a friend in that.
Oh,
yeah,
that's really sad.
Yeah, so that's where if you think, oh, I've heard of Aurora, that's unfortunately where you heard it from.
We have an Aurora here.
Do you?
Yeah, it's like 40 minutes from me. Kyle works in Aurora.
Oh,
it's really fun. Little tidbit.
So February 28th, 2021 in Grand Junction, Colorado, police were called out to Blue Heron boat ramp where there was an almost fully submerged car in the water. Terry, Brian's mother, Brian was the driver of the car, was there speaking to police as they were trying to figure out how did this happen and how they were going to get this car out. They weren't sure a tow truck could do it because the truck would most likely have to get into the water to pull the car out because it was a boat ramp and the car had slid down the boat ramp. And then because it's a river, it kind of like turned it. So it was parallel with the shore. So it's not like they could just back in and pull it out.
Oh, okay. It had kind of like floated a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, this is February in Colorado. So it was freezing. The water was freezing cold and it was at night. So most of the tow companies were like, no, we don't want to do that. When police asked Terry what happened, she said her son was an inexperienced driver. He parked his car on an angle to get out and look around for a bit and went to go back into the car, but wasn't able to pull it out because it was on too far of an angle. And she said he was an inexperienced driver because they didn't let him get his driver's license until he was like 18. So he'd only been driving for like a year or two at this point. So police were like, that's weird. So they go talk to Brian. Brian at this point was sitting in his dad's car because he had gotten wet. And again, it was freezing out. So he was cold. So he was sitting in his dad's car. And police went to talk to him. They said, why was he there? And he said he just felt like he needed to go get out. So why not park here and just think and relax a little bit, which I totally get. I used to live 45 minutes from Grand Haven, which is like it's the shore of Lake Michigan. And sometimes I would just drive out there to think, like, I get it. And he said he parked on the boat ramp thinking it would be easy to get out, but when he tried to put it in drive, it wouldn't go up. He said he had backed up onto the ramp and it just kind of like slid in. Brian's dad, who's also named Brian, so Brian Sr., said that it was super embarrassing because he ran the life jacket program on the ramp. So that was his job. And his son's car went in, like, basically at his place of work.
Yeah, but obviously there's something that's not adding up here.
Not yet, Jessica. So after some time waiting and finally getting a tow truck that would come and pull his car out in the middle of the night in the frigid cold water, Brian's parents took him home because he had gotten wet and it's Colorado and he was freezing. They then came back and police had kind of an odd question for them. As they were pulling out the car, they noticed a lot of red something kind of dripping down from the license plate and onto the bumper. And they said it kind of looks like blood. They were worried at first that maybe he had hurt himself getting out of the water and he hadn't noticed because, one, he was so cold and the adrenaline from the car falling in the water. And so they're like, well, if he did hurt himself that bad, like he's home alone, bleeding right now, we need to call him. So she called him. He said he was fine. He didn't see any blood on him. He didn't see anywhere where he had a cut. And police were like, okay, and gave them back the car, which,
You're
what?
not going to investigate a little bit more?
Nope. They just said, okay, here's your car back.
That seems like not great policing.
You know. The next day, police were called back out to Blue Heron Ramp, where a wallet of a missing homeless man, Warren Barnes, was said to be found. The people who found the wallet called the People Ready, which is where Warren worked, and they got a hold of a lady named Monique, who the People Ready called Monique, who had forged a friendship with Warren over the years, and asked if she had seen him. And she hadn't, so she went down to the boat ramp to speak to police. She said she owned a shop called Monique's Bridal downtown, and Warren would come to her place. She would give him a chair to sit on, and he would read his books, and she would give him money from time to time. She said he was supposed to come back Sunday, but never showed up. And it was weird that his wallet would be at the ramp because he would have never come all the way down there. And Monique wasn't the only person who was worried about Warren. Another shop owner in the area said that every day, without fail, Warren would come to her shop at 6 a.m., a bit before they opened. He would have coffee, but he hadn't shown up in a couple of days. When police asked Monique who had found the wallet, she said it was some guy who owned the life jacket program at the dock.
Uh-oh.
Dun, dun, dun. Apparently, Brian Sr. had found the wallet in his son's car.
Oh no.
His mom was worried and kind of suspicious. So while her son was out at a friend's house, she looked through his room. That night, police received the following call. 911, this is John. What's the emergency? What's the address of the emergency? Hi, there's an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag. Okay, what was it? I think it's a human head. It's a what?
Oh my God.
I think it's a human head. Why do you think it's that? Because it looks like it. I saw an ear. Is it all bloody? Anything like that? Can you please just come? Do I have to take a picture and send it to you? Can you just come? Sassy.
Sassy, mama.
What's the
But
address? Oh,
but
sorry.
seriously,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I'm sure she didn't examine it.
I understand that they have to assess the situation because they need to get all of their facts straight.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like
Yeah.
if somebody sees what they think to be a human head, how else do you want them to explain it to you?
Right.
Like, even if it's a fake human head, just send the fucking police.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
So she gives them the address and he says, is your son there now? She says, he just pulled up. We wanted to make sure he was here before we called. They said, how old is he? She said, 19. He's had a little bit of fascination with the morbid, but he was channeling it, I thought, into becoming a crime scene investigator, but not so much. Do you think he's going to be cooperative with us? I don't know. I don't think he'll be violent. He just came back from his friend's house. Does he have any weapons in his room, or do you guys have any in the house? I don't know. I think that he has a shotgun, but we can certainly remove it immediately before he gets in his room. He's out by the car now. So is the bag still in the closet? No, it's in my kitchen sink. And there's a secondary bag that I have not opened. It's currently covered with a towel. And there's a second bag. Yeah, there's a second bag now. I don't know what's in it. I didn't open it. I'm sorry. Did you take the second bag out of the closet? I took the second bag out of the closet and put it in the sink. Where's Brian now? I think he's still out front. I am. This doesn't make sense. I must have typed this wrong, but it says I am yes because I don't want him to hear me. So I think he asked if she's still in the house. So then police show up, sirens off because they didn't want to scare Brian or agitate him in any way. And they walk up to a waiting Brian just standing in his driveway. Police approach Brian and they say, hey, what's up, man? Still trying to keep everything calm. Brian says, not much. And an officer asks if he's going to cooperate. He says yes. Then the officer says, so parents have some concerns about some stuff they may have found in your room. Brian says, yeah, I believe so. Brian looks like any typical 19-year-old who's maybe a little too sheltered.
he
He
looks
has,
like a fucking dweeb.
yeah, he has glasses, short brown hair, kind of fluffy, like he needs a haircut, and generally kind of a nerdy demeanor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a dweeb.
Very dweeby, yes.
Like I literally explained, I think I told it on the podcast about a guy that came into the place I worked,
Yeah, I
and the
remember that.
security guard was like, what he's looking like? I don't know. He looked like a dweeb. I don't know. I would not be a very good cop.
Hey,
I
she
do
picked him
not.
out because of that. So,
You really, yeah, it was crazy. But anyways, sorry. Thought that was funny.
yeah. So, Brian said, yeah, I believe so, saying that he knows what his parents are worried about. And police say, well, what would that be? Brian kind of looks away and his whole demeanor changes when he looks back. He said, a human head and hands, as he turned his head back towards the police. He seems to have lifted his chin a bit. His voice is a bit deeper and stronger. The change was jarring. It was insane, the change in him, just from being like calm, cool, collected to saying that he had a head and hands in his room. This is so sad. And the cops then do the typical, like, do you have anything sharp, blah blah blah, and they put him in the back of the patrol car while they go talk to his parents. His parents are sitting in the front yard and his mom is bawling, just like uncontrollably sobbing. I mean, can you even imagine? His dad tells her to go inside, that he would handle it, but then they both just kind of sit down. I think they're both kind of in shock. The officer asks if they can go in and verify what was in the bag. Dad gave permission. As Dad is walking the officer into the house, he tells what I'm assuming is Brian's brother to stay with your mom and give her a hug. I think they're just barely getting through at this point. The officer enters the kitchen with gloves, removes the towel, opens the bag, looks for just a second, quickly shuts the bag and says, yep, and then leaves the house. So, yeah, pretty gruesome. As this is happening, another officer is walking Brian to the police car, and he says he's not feeling well and that he's been really anxious for the past few days. Poor
maybe
baby.
because you murdered a human being and
Yeah.
you're a piece of shit, you dweeb.
Then, as he's in the car, he tells the police officer, Grand Junction has gotten really violent lately.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is My Skeptical Sister. I'm Megan, the skeptical one. My arm and left hip sort of pass through it. It's called a shadow. Girl, shut
go ahead.
your mouth. And I'm Erin, the believer. Still to this day, we have no clue what we saw. Any ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Already you have an
what
idea?
What are your ideas? Let's go with you first.
That it was a demon monster?
Like, how does your mind go demon monster?
Did you not hear glowing red eyes that slowly crept closer to their bed?
We might not agree on the paranormal, but we both love to hear your scary stories.
Yikes.
Ooh.
That is really creepy.
Yeah.
Our podcast is called My Skeptical Sister, and we'd love for you to check us out on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, follow us on TikTok and Instagram.
Come for the scares, but stay for the laughs.
So he's like a little vigilante or something?
I don't know. She just sits in silence, the officer.
Or he was playing a joke on himself because he was violent. I don't know.
I know. As they drive to the sheriff's office, they pass over a bridge and Brian says, it was under this bridge.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She continues to drive in silence.
Dude, have you not heard of like not to say anything?
Oh, he says everything.
Oh my God.
He doesn't care. He's so calm. His mom is bawling. His dad's barely hanging on. And he's just casually making his comments as they drive to the police station. It's insane. He is very polite to the police officers. So there is that. Investigators put each of them, Brian, mom, and dad, in separate interrogation rooms. Poor mom, Terry, she was just bawling. She sat down, arms crossed around her like she was trying to hug herself, and just wailed. It was heartbreaking. She explains that after they got Brian's car back to the house, her husband was going through it, trying to kind of like pick it up, see if he could salvage it at all. And he came across this wallet. She also brought up the blood that the officer thought he saw in the car and said that Brian had taken a special effects class last summer. And he had said that one of his fake blood containers had burst in his trunk. So it must be that. And she was like, yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, I would think the same thing if my son had told me that. Well, as she's telling police this, Brian's dad, Brian Sr., was also being spoken to. And he said that he had actually first found a knife in the glove box, like a really big knife, and then the wallet between the door. So he looked through the wallet carefully because it was frozen, and he found a card of the People Ready and a social security card. So Brian Sr. called People Ready, and he was like, hey, this is weird, but I've got a wallet here with so-and-so's name, and I'm hoping he works for you. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's Warren. We've been missing him. He didn't show up today. Brian Sr. was floored. He thought, oh, my God, he's a missing person. He said, okay, well, I found his wallet at Blue Heron Boat Ramp. So here's my name and information. You know, if he comes looking for it, let him know. He then calls Brian and says, hey, what's going on? There's a wallet in the car. And Brian said, oh, I found it down at the boat ramp. And Brian Sr. said that Brian was so sincere that he wanted to believe him. He's his son, you know, and I don't blame him.
Well, and yeah, you're not going to think that your child who you've sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important part. They sheltered him for a very long time.
Yeah.
You're not going to think that he's just going to pick up and murder somebody.
Yeah. Although
Oh.
there were red flags.
Oh.
And we'll talk a little bit about those. So he said, Brian Sr. pressed a little further, and Brian said, Dad, I swear to you, I only know one Warren, and he's at my school. He's my friend at school. It's not him. And again, Brian believed him. They just kind of moved on until Terry found what she had in the closet. She said she found a tub, and in the tub was a double bagged thing. And she's like, what is this? And she saw that there were maggots on it. So she's like, oh, I better take this to the sink. Probably thinking like, oh, he's a gross teenage boy. He probably left food in here, right?
Yeah, but maggots aren't. Okay.
Yeah. So she put it in the sink, opened the bag, and saw some blood. She said she opened the second bag and saw a man's head. She starts bawling again and hyperventilating. She said she hadn't opened the other bag she found, but immediately called her husband and told him that he needed to come home now. And apparently they were divorced at the time. I didn't realize that till later on in the story. So I think he was either her ex-husband or they were like separating. But anywho, his parents then told Brian Jr. to come home because they needed the car. And as he pulled up, they called 911. So something super interesting. The investigator started the conversation asking him about where he went to school, if he worked, just like normal dumb chit chat. And I was like, oh yeah, they're building rapport. But Explore With Us also explained that having a normal conversation with him and showing that he can handle school and work is a way to try and combat a possible insanity plea. And they do a lot of stuff like this through the interrogation.
Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah. Yeah. They do a lot of stuff like this to try and whatever the defense would throw at them as far as like an insanity plea, they try and combat it, asking him questions and having him answer them. So it's pretty interesting. Then the investigator said, well, how'd you get here? And Brian just nonchalantly and matter-of-factly says, I murdered someone. So investigators ask him to tell them everything in as much detail as he can remember. And boy, does he. He starts out by saying, so because I'm already going to jail for 15 years probably. And the investigator's like, I have no idea. We're just at the beginning. And Brian said, well, it's murder. I'm going to jail for probably 20 years. So I figure why fight it?
That's just so wild to me.
So crazy.
Because he sounds like he knows his shit.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying he was polite with them.
Mm-hmm.
For him to just go up and do something like that.
I know. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
So the investigator said, what's important to me is to learn as much about you and what you did as I can. So here we go. And these are in Brian's words from the interrogation tapes. Yeah, it was the night of February 27th. It was a full moon, and I figured I can see well, so why not drive out? I'm in a bad state of mind at the time. I have major depressive disorder, so I'm not thinking something positively. And I'd been cruising around for an hour, hour and a half. So I fill up on gas halfway through, and I'm eventually driving underneath the bridge near the sheriff's office. He continues with details like this for a bit. He also let him know that he's bad with words and he's an habitual shaker. He was diagnosed with ADHD and autism, so it's probably like where the shaking comes from. Eventually, Brian says, I have a question. People who committed crimes like me, do we stay in the county jail or are we moved?
Who asks that?
I know. And the investigator's like, well, it just all depends on what the judge says. Brian's now drawing a figure on the wall of where his car was. It looks like it's like a whiteboard wall. And so he's drawing a figure on where his car was in relation to the bridge and the railroad track. He said he saw a figure on the track and thought, oh, interesting. That's exactly how he said it. Oh, interesting.
So you watched like his interview tape?
Mm-hmm.
Ew. Those are so jarring.
So jarring and so chilling. And I tried to capture as much of like his mannerisms as I could.
Yeah.
So I talk about that a lot. But he goes, "Ooh, interesting." He said,
sorry.
"No, you're fine."
Sorry. What type of, it might not be important, but like, did they indicate the level or degree that he had like the ADHD and autism or?
They said he had high functioning Asperger's.
Okay. So
And the
like
ADHD, I'm not sure.
so he kind of like, he knows right from wrong.
Oh, well, yeah. And that's something that the investigators also asked some questions about to kind of determine that.
Okay.
He said he moves closer and sees a large thing wrapped in a canvas. And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife. I put on 3 pairs of gloves because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, those vinyl gloves, by imprinting your fingerprints through. So I put on 2, 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck. He was panicking at first in his old man voice. He was in his 50s. He laughs. I'm not lying. I know I'm calling him an old man. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why?" Oh, he did it in that voice like that.
Are you kidding me?
No.
That is what?
Yeah.
Who? I have no
wilder.
words. I
Yeah.
have no words.
And I just keep on stabbing his neck. Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
What?
This asshole gets on the ground, like kind of like on all fours, and says, "This is him," meaning the ground. I was straddled on top of him like this. Brian pulls his arm back like he's going to stab, and he starts stabbing the ground a few times.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah. And I was so impressed with the investigators because through all this like craziness and antics, they kept their cool. They didn't act like shocked. They really tried to keep the rapport going with him. He then says, and he couldn't fight back. It was surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, "Oh, this guy's going to be a tough," he said with a smile on his face. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time, I was growling and making animalistic noises. Brian then does a demonstration of the noises he was making with like a crazed face, wide eyes while he's doing it. You can tell he's excited.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Ew. Yeah. Who demonstrates that?
Yeah.
Ew.
He then says the whole ordeal lasted about a minute, minute and a half. And when I was finished stabbing, he took out his last breath, a grunt, and his head was halfway cut off with the stabs. All the while, no, actually, after I killed him, I just couldn't stop saying, "Stinky, dirty, stinky, stinky." I wasn't smelling anything, but yeah. Yeah. And have you ever seen those Reddit things where they have a picture of them and then they're like holding a sign and it says, "Rate me"?
No.
Oh, well, yeah, you can do that on Reddit and people will like rate your physical whatever. And he did that. And his username was that_stinky_boy.
Why?
I don't
Like,
know.
have a shower.
Isn't that so weird?
Yeah.
So investigators asked why he was saying that. And Brian said he doesn't know. The investigator says, "Okay, but you remember doing it." So he says, "Yeah, I suppose it was just me speaking out my mind at that moment. It was pouring out of my mind." The investigator says, "Were you worried about, I mean, it looks pretty close to the road and all, somebody seeing it or catching it?" And so this is another part where the investigators are trying to show that he knew a right from wrong, like he was worried about getting caught. So he says, "Well, it was 11 p.m., so not many people are driving, but, well, it was behind the pillar." He then shows, like, with his hands where it was. He was like, "Here's the car and here's the pillar." And he was saying that people wouldn't have been able to see it well. The investigator says, "So you weren't worried about someone seeing you?" And he said, "Well, it was dark, so they wouldn't have seen the guy. They would have seen me holding," he kind of like smirks and laughs, a bloody 12-inch knife, wearing gloves, and wearing a mask to conceal my identity, a face mask.
Why is he so nonchalant?
So nonchalant. And when I say that he smirk laughs, it's not like a cocky. It's like you're just having a regular conversation and you're like, yeah, so it was crazy. The other day I went to the store. It was like that. It's insane. There was then some more talking, and then Brian continues. And then let's see. Yeah. And then after that, I stripped his clothes. I cut his belly open to see his guts. He's kind of smirking here, almost like he's waiting for a reaction, like he's waiting for a reaction from the investigators, but they didn't give it to him.
Like a toddler?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He then says, they're really pink. And then he laughs and says, sorry, that was morbid.
Yeah, that was morbid, but not everything else.
Yeah.
What the hell?
So his mom and friends did say that Brian had a really morbid sense of humor. And his friend said that his jokes were always about something dark or violent. And he was always intending to get a reaction out of people. And that'll show in a little bit when we talk a little bit more about his mom and what she says. But Brian wasn't done. There was a lot of postmortem mutilation. These are Brian's words. I destroyed his eyes by stabbing them. He made a stabbing motion while saying, ch-ch-ch. And then I cut off his hands. I put those in plastic Ziploc bags. And then I cut off his arm at this joint and this joint. He motioned to the elbow and the shoulder. And then at this arm, I tried cutting here, the elbow. And then I tried cutting it here, the shoulder. But what happened was I accidentally broke his bone and it was like poking out, motioning to the upper arm. And so I left that one here. Partially cut, dismembered here, bones stick out. And then I left his body there. And then I took his head and put it in a leftover pizza box from dinner a few nights ago. And then I took the hands and put them in the back and drove home, hid the heads and the hand in my room, cleaned the knife, threw away the garbage with blood on it. And then I put the blood-stained, well, it wasn't blood-stained. It had spatters on it. I put that in the washing machine. Set it just like that.
Like he's telling a story at a party.
Yep. Like he's telling you about his day.
Oh my God.
Yep. The police officer said, wait, what did you put in there? He said, I put the outfit I was murdering him in the washing machine. He's like, you were wearing it? Yeah, I was wearing it. I put it on high speed so it would effectively remove the blood, and I washed it twice. So he was wearing, Michael Myers, the kind of blue jumpsuit that he wears?
No, maybe.
In Halloween?
Kind of like the coveralls?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's what he was wearing because he got it as a Halloween costume when he went as Michael Myers one year. And he said that he associated that outfit with violence. So it just fit.
Okay.
Then the investigator just restated what he did to have Brian confirm it. And Brian said, yeah, I tossed the arm bits around. Like I took the right arm bit, threw it out, took the left arm bit, threw it out while motioning him throwing it. He was like, threw it out. The investigators went back over his story and asked him how many times did he stab Warren, and he laughed and he said, I didn't count, but probably 30 or 40 times. He said then he also stabbed his head and he stabbed him through the ribs. He sliced open his belly, carved up his leg, said I made several slices on his leg. And the investigator said, why? He said, I was just doing everything I could think of at the time. I then cut off his head and gave him a Glasgow smile. And the officer says, what's that? He said, a Joker smile. So he cut his lips up like a Joker smile. Thankfully, this was all after Warren had died. So Warren had already passed from the stabbing in the neck. So all of this mutilation happened after Warren was dead.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Small miracles, right? The investigator said, well, why? Like, why'd you give him a Joker smile? He said, oh, I suppose it was a frenzy. I was just so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline. They're okay, just woo. And I paused and I said, why are you doing this? And I said, I've been waiting to do this. Oh, sorry. That he said, as Warren was dying, he asked why he was doing this. And Brian said, I've been wanting to do this for a long fucking time. He admitted to taking photos, but he said deleting them. He said he deleted them because they were evidence, but police were able to find them. And so the fact that they were asking him about, were you afraid to get caught? And him saying, oh, I deleted the photos. And they asked why he deleted them. And he said, oh, because they're evidence. Again, this is them trying to show like he knew right from wrong because he was trying to hide it.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. So then investigator asked where Brian threw the body parts. And Brian's like, yeah, I know crime scenes can be a very wide area. You're going to want to look in like a 5 to 10 foot area. Again, it was like he was just listing what he did in the day. I went to the store, got some takeout, filled up on gas. I've never seen so little emotion in a person. It's bizarre. Like, I guess it was a mix between incredibly no emotion at all and excitement. Like those were the two emotions he was going through. And like you could tell that he was proud of himself and he was like, wow, look what I did. I'm so cool. Like one of those.
That's insane. And he's just a kid.
He's 19.
I mean, yeah, he's not a kid.
No, I mean, yeah, he's just a kid. He's 19. Like, yeah.
And there have been so many cold-blooded killers out there. And it's wild that we haven't really heard of him.
I know. Well,
and
I think had his mom not found this, he for sure was a serial killer in the making.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. They then asked Brian what he put the heads and hands in when he got home, and he explained the 3 rule for bodies. And he made this up on his own. He was very proud of himself. He said 3 hours rigor mortis sets in, the body stiffens. 3 days, the body starts to stink because of decomp. 3 weeks, the body is starting to seriously decompose. 3 months, the body is unrecognizable. And 3 years, it's a skeleton. And he calls it the 3 rule for bodies. And he's very proud of himself for coming up with that. The investigator asked why he cut him up. And Brian said, because I always wanted to know what it was like to cut up someone, to be honest.
Did he ever say how he knew the 3 rule?
So he took like he's took a couple classes. One was like a special effects class, and then he was also taking some like forensics criminology courses and reading some books on it.
No, like I get that because he's a pretty morbid kid, so obviously he's going to take classes.
Mm-hmm.
But did he test this theory out? Because he's saying that he's the one that came up with this theory.
Yeah.
So how does he know?
That's a good point. Did he ever kill before? And what's funny is, I think I'll talk about this a little bit later, but if I don't, I'll just say it now. They ask him if he's ever murdered before. And he says no. But the way he smiled when he said it made me think that he was lying.
And I kind of feel like if you're going to come up with this theory, this 3 theory, that you're going to have some evidence behind it. You can't just pull that number out of your ass.
Yeah, like maybe yeah. Oof, I didn't even think about that.
Ugh, gross.
So they asked him, why did you stop cutting then? And he said, because the arms were, that's it. That's all I wanted to know, what it was like cutting off the limbs. He smirks and laughs. He said, were you worried about leaving evidence behind? Oh, getting caught? Totally, with a big smile on his face. He also said he was planning on keeping a finger because it was small, didn't take up a lot of space, and wouldn't smell as much. So he was already wanting to keep tokens. I mean, that's serial killer 101. Brian said that police seemed to not care much about high-risk individuals like homeless people, prostitutes, etc. So he was deliberately looking for someone who lived that life. And he actually said, well, it seems like police, and no offense, but police don't seem to really care. And I was like, oh my God. And he said he was just going to leave that there. Like he was just going to leave the body there, but he was worried about fibers. So that's why he took everything, messed up the clothes, took them with him. He also confessed that he had been planning or looking for someone to do this to for about 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Yeah. He then goes on to say that he's not bad with women, but when he meets one, he, like, half of him says, I want to take her home. And half of him says, I wonder what her head would look like on a stick. And then he smiles and laughs.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely how you're going to get the ladies.
Yeah. They then ask if he's ever done it before, and he says no with a smile, like I said. They then ask if he's ever practiced on animals, and he says yes. And I'm not going to go into it, but he did a similar thing to a cat, to what he did to Warren. Apparently,
serial killer.
Yeah, absolutely. All the things are checking. And apparently last year, his family found a kit that he was working on with hammers, shovels, knives, large zip ties, duct tape. And it was a kit made for hurting people. But he said he convinced his parents that it was for something else. And they told him that he either had to throw it away or they would call the cops. So they obviously knew, or at least part of them knew, that this wasn't for whatever Brian said that it was for. He then goes on to tell them about the night his car was in the river. He actually had the body in the trunk. Surprise, surprise. He pulled the body out and just let it float down the river. And then Jessica, he says this. God knows where he is now. Would he be a he still? He's dead.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No. And the investigator goes, he's still a he. He said his car slipped in and the water, he started panicking and he was like, shit, this is what I'll be remembered for, dying of hypothermia while attempting to hide a body, and then laughs. Apparently, he was pretty enamored with Jeffrey Dahmer and said his nickname was Jeffrey Dahmer in school, and he dressed up as him for Halloween one year. His teachers were also worried that he could be dangerous. One year they found a notebook of Brian's and it had a bunch of serial killer statistics in it. He had to give a speech, and the teacher said, you always want to start with a catchy opening. So he made this like fake whip out of duct tape and like whipped the podium to get everybody's attention. Not a bad idea. Well, then he took that whip and whipped a disabled student with it. And he got suspended. And then in 2019, he was suspended for intentionally causing a panic attack in a student with PTSD because he thought it was funny.
That's a dick.
Yeah. The admins of the school got together and said that he had a risk for violence and he was potentially dangerous. Sadly, and probably not surprisingly, his mom made a lot of excuses for him. Like saying, so apparently he had brought a weapon to school one time, and she said the story went like this. He was giving out candy on the bus. He saw this kid who had some nunchucks, and he's like, oh man, those are so cool. The kid's like, hey, if you give me some candy, I'll bring you some nunchucks. And he was like, okay. So the kid brought some nunchucks, and he had some glass ones and some rubber ones. And Brian was like, oh, I can't take the glass ones. I'll get in trouble for that, but let me take the rubber ones. So he took the rubber ones and he got caught with that. His mom said, the teacher was like, hey, what's that? And he was like, oh, nothing. And he got suspended. And she's like, well, what about the other kid? He didn't get suspended. And she said that he didn't have a lot of other behavioral issues like Brian did. And she feels like they singled him out, which they did because of his past issues.
Did they ever say what his childhood was like?
They didn't, but they said it seems like from an early age, he was very into morbid things. He was very into morbid jokes. He was very into shock value. He was a jerk. This is one thing I didn't get. One of his friends said that she embarrassingly thought he was funny. She said, you either thought his humor was funny or it wasn't. She's like, I embarrassingly thought it was funny. She goes, but my best friend didn't like him because he would always make jokes. She was a bigger girl about her being fat and a pig. And I was like, how are you friends with a person who's calling your best friend that?
Yeah, it makes literally no sense.
No.
Like, what are you getting out of this friendship?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just a lot of like I said, really morbid humor. And his dad thought he was incapable of violence. He said, yeah, he did okay in school, maybe said a swear word here and there, no biggie. But he had all these suspensions and all these red flags. It was just like he was in denial, which I get. Like, even if your kid has a really morbid sense of humor, you're never going to think he's going to do something like this. You're never in your wildest dreams ever going to think that your kid's going to do something like this. But Brian said they asked him something about like serial killers or whatever. And he was like, yeah, I would only be a serial killer if it brought me fame. But why did he do this? He said that he wanted to know what it would be like. He said people like Ted Bundy and shit always talk about murder being the best feeling in the world. And I had spent years wondering what it was like. The investigator said, so what did it feel like? He said, it's an intense rush of adrenaline. My whole body was shaking, not like out of fear. It was like shake, 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 shake. It was like just pure excitement, not excitement as in joy, just excitement as increased heartbeat and sweating. So did you enjoy it? I don't know. I'm sort of neutral about the whole thing. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't hate it. If I go back to that night, I probably wouldn't have done it knowing what it felt like and knowing how this would turn out. I wouldn't have done it. What did you think it was going to feel like? I thought it was going to feel like the best feeling in the world.
Oh, that's confusing. Because now I feel like he hasn't killed before.
Yeah.
If he makes a comment like that, right?
Yeah.
Or because I don't think that he's just saying it to save face.
No.
Because he's been very open and honest about everything else.
Yeah.
Oh, that's confusing.
So I don't think he had killed before. I think his 3 rule that he got was just from research. I do, however, think he would have killed again. I think like any other serial killer, I think this was his cooling down period. He was like, it was okay. And then I think he would have started craving it again.
Well, probably trying to get a different feeling.
Yeah, like, oh, I didn't feel it this time. Maybe I'll feel it with some other victim or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I try it this way, maybe I'll feel something different for it. And yeah.
Wait for this. When they walked Brian to the booking area, Brian looked at the officer, smiled, and said, I feel like Hannibal Lecter right now.
Ew, why? Like, are you going to eat somebody? Did he eat him?
No.
Okay, good.
In January 2022, he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Because of this, he got a psychological evaluation. The doctors asked him how he felt about the killing in retrospect, and he said, yeah, it just kind of sucks that it happened, but it happened. And they said, well, what sucks about it? And he says, well, it sucks that I'm locked up and I can't see my friends, and I really miss video games and the internet.
The fact that a human being's life was taken is not the part that sucks.
No. The jury rejected his insanity plea and found him guilty on 1 count of evidence tampering, 2 counts of tampering with a deceased human body, and 1 count of murder in the 1st degree. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Unfortunately, his parents, basically their whole life is ruined because his mom had an in-home daycare.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so obviously, this was not a quiet story. Everybody knew about it. And then her dad owned a business and his name was the same name as his son. So that's what his name is synonymous with now. But Monique talked about how amazing Warren was and said that she now has a memorial next to her boutique in town. It's a chair. It's like a metal chair with metal books on it for him.
That's really cute.
Yeah.
Aw.
And that's the story of the murder of Warren Barnes.
Aw.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Isn't that crazy?
That was crazy.
Yeah. I thought that would take a lot longer, so I got it all done. We thought it might have to be a two-parter, but I think it seems so long because a lot of it was dialogue, you know?
Yeah. Ugh. Gives me the heaves and the jeebs.
It was just for him being so young and so emotionless when he was talking about this. It's astounding. And like I said, when he was laughing and smirking, it wasn't ever like a cocky, like a Ted Bundy cockiness. It was just I'm telling you about an everyday normal conversation, you know? It's just crazy. Like I said, if you can go watch that documentary, it's by Explore With Us. It's really, really well done, and you can watch him and his reactions, and it's one for the books.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. Well, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
For that super awesome story.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, me neither. But it is a very interesting psychological look, especially the way that documentary did it. So,
yes. Well, I'm now gonna dive into some history.
Yay.
For us. She's a badass, but she's also really bad.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. I used worldhistory.org. I used thewayofthepirates.com.
Ooh.
And a push pirate from Weebly.
Ooh.
Anyways, I am going to apologize now. I swear I did my best in looking at pronunciations for this story. I am not great with this
Mandarin.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's Chinese. Well, she was Cantonese, so.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, the names are difficult for me to pronounce with my English tongue, but I'm going to do my best. So I am going to apologize now ahead of time. If anybody can tell me the proper pronunciations, if I do mess up, I would love that. I always want to learn. So I'm going to talk about Madame Cheng, and that's how I'm going to refer to her as. She had a lot of different names. She was Madame Cheng, Zhenxi, Zhangxi, Sheng Sao, and Shi Xinggu.
Wow. I have one name. It's Ashley.
Me too. Well, no, I have two. It's Jessica and Hey Bitch.
Hey bitch. Yeah, I guess technically I have three names, like my first, middle, and last.
Yeah. So even though she has all those different names, I'm just gonna call her Madame Cheng or MC. Okay. Make my life easier.
I like MC, like MC Hammer.
Yeah, or like I was thinking like MJ from Spider-Man.
Ooh.
I almost said Star Wars. Definitely not. She is unquestionably one of the most distinctive pirate leaders in history.
Ooh.
And I don't know if you watched one of the crappy Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, did you watch all of them?
Yeah.
So you know that Chinese pirate lord in like World's End or something it was.
Maybe.
Anyways, that's who they based her off of MC.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. She was born in 1775 and distinguished herself in this way not only by being a woman, but also by personally leading a force. And this is where some citations varied. So she was leading a force of more than 20,000 pirates and over 300 pirate ships.
Ooh.
She also formed alliances with numerous other pirate leaders who followed her, building a naval force that consisted of more than 180,000 pirates and over 1,500 naval ships.
Oh my gosh. Go her.
Yeah.
Boss babe.
So that's where it like varied a bit. Some sources were lower, some were much higher.
Gotcha.
So take
it's
it
a
with a
thing
grain
of legend.
salt. Yeah, but all in all, she was just a badass bitch who had a lot of power. The only thing that is known about her early life is that she was a Cantonese prostitute who advanced fast through the ranks of the Guangzhou brothel where she was born.
I love a story of coming from nothing and making yourself into something.
Me too. I love that for her. She gained notoriety for influencing men with her extraordinary, potent pillow talk.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if she made alliances with that many other pirates, and I'm sure they did not respect women very much back then, she had to have been a good talker.
Yeah. She was the Cleopatra of the pirates.
Ooh.
Eventually, she gained control of a great fleet of pirate ships, assembling them into a well-oiled machine that caught the eye of renowned Chinese pirate Zheng Yi, sometimes called Ching Yi. Leader of a sizable pirate confederation, he wreaked havoc in the South China Sea. Zheng increased the size of this force to about 40,000 troops and 600 ships in just 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the dude I'm talking about now, okay? So these fleets were split up into 6 divisions, each of which had a separate commander in charge and operated in a predetermined region of the South China Sea. Because each of the 6 fleet's ships flew a distinct color flag, it was simple to distinguish between them. The largest of these, the 200-ship Red Flag Fleet, was led by Zheng Yi personally. From Hong Kong to Vietnam, the pirates ambushed foreign ships and huge commerce vessels, transporting valuables to and from China and Malaysia. One area that was particularly popular with pirates was the Canton River Delta and the islands surrounding it. In fact, European sailors dubbed the pirates that frequented this area and the islands ladrones, which translates to thieves or brigands.
You know, it's funny. Whenever I pictured pirates, I pictured like English pirates.
Yeah.
I never really pictured Asian pirates, but I guess that makes sense that there are pirates all over.
All over. And that's the thing. Yeah, I always pictured it was them coming into, the Caribbeans.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably because of the movie.
Probably.
Skewed my view.
There's also a show. What was it? Maybe it's called
Black Flag.
Yeah. Also English pirates in the Caribbean.
Yeah. So I think it's just more well known, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of the greats, right? So like Blackbeard and yeah.
That's the only one we can name.
Long John Silver.
Oh, okay. Is that a real pirate?
I don't know.
I thought that was just a restaurant.
I have a list of some pirates here. Henry Morgan, the Barbarossa brothers.
Oh.
Bartholomew Black Bart Roberts.
That does not strike fear in the heart.
Calico Jack.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I like that one.
There's a few.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are predominantly white. Precious items included gold, silver, cotton, tea, rolls of silk, spices, Chinese china, and more tea. were among the looted commodities. After that, these products were sold to coastal merchants. Foreign ship captive seafarers were frequently ransomed. Coastal villages were often targeted either to steal provisions from them or to force them to pay protection money. Merchant vessel commanders were also subject to this tactic, as they had to buy a pass or risk being attacked by any ship in the Confederation. Even coastal fortifications were occasionally overrun by them.
Dang.
Yeah. Jung had the most exquisite prisoners waiting for him when he made the decision that he wanted to marry.
Oh.
He picked MC.
Oh.
But as soon as
Did she pick him?
As soon as she was freed, she threw herself at him and scratched up his face.
She did not pick him.
Ultimately, he used jewelry, clothes, and promises of authority to entice her to marry him. They made the decision to wed in 1801 in order to unite their pirate crews, which eventually expanded to amazing proportions.
Nice.
So these two badass pirates decided to come together.
Scary for everyone. It's like, okay, we're listening to a story about pirates, and I'm like, yeah. And then I have to stop and remind myself that pirates were very bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets graphic later.
Okay.
I was like, oh, this is nice. And then I heard some of the things she did. I was like, oh, not so nice.
That's not great.
Because I was reading how people like really feared her. And I'm like,
women power.
And then demanded respect. And
then, powerful women. Yeah. And then you're like, ooh, that's like, not good.
you made some really bad choices. Moral choices. She made the most of her marriage by forging alliances with numerous other sizable Cantonese pirate ships and securing her position within the vast pirate fleet. Almost all Chinese ships passing through their realm at this point paid for protection. She assumed command of the fleet following the death of her husband, Jung, in 1807, who died either in a fight or in a typhoon.
Or by his wife's hand.
We'll never know. I think he was off on another ship, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she quickly fell in love with Chung Po, Jung's adopted son and lover.
Wait.
Yeah. I was researching this and I looked over to Kyle and I said, hey, I need to read a sentence out loud to you. And you need to tell me if what I'm reading is how I'm perceiving this.
Wait, so it was her husband's adopted son and lover that she married, or it was her adopted son and lover that she married?
Her husband. So it was technically, they adopted him. He was a captive with her. So they adopted him, and it was her husband's lover.
And now her lover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Caught up.
And
Don't like it, but I'm caught up.
And I thought maybe it was just the source I read, but I read it in two spots.
Well, it's like who's that famous director that married his adopted daughter? Woody
Edgar Allan Poe?
No, Woody
Harrelson?
Nope. Woody. You know the other one.
No, I don't. His name? I don't know.
Okay, keep going and I'll find it.
Oh, Allen.
Yeah, Woody Allen.
Oh.
Yeah, he married his adopted daughter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But at least it wasn't his wife's lover, too.
Yeah. And during that period, MC had complete authority over the pirate fleet. This was made possible by both her insistence that all pirates under her command adhere to an extremely rigid pirate code and her skillful political maneuvers, which allowed her to reign without opposition. And the fact that everybody feared her, even her husband feared her before he died. So nobody would want to be like, yo.
Yeah, don't do that. That's not nice.
Don't do that. So I spoke of her assuming command of this giant fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And many of these vessels were junks.
Oh.
For generations, the junk has been the mainstay of Chinese waterways.
Wait, what are junks?
They had 40 cannons and could tote up to 800 tons of payload.
Oh, wow.
Junks, having a retractable rudder and no keel, made slipping into shallow waters to catch a target vessel at anchor by surprise very easy.
When you said junks, I thought you meant like the ships were junk.
That's what I thought too.
Oh, okay.
And I think the reason that they're called junks is because they are so modified. So they're not like a regular ship.
Okay.
Small boats, which could hold 20 men and several swivel cannons, were also transported by junks and were used to sneak up on a ship. So it was like their little secret weapons. Anyone who resisted would either be tortured or put to death if they were found. European seamen had a slightly better experience because they could be ransomed. Nonetheless, this was a time-consuming procedure, resulting in many being detained for months in filthy, claustrophobic conditions.
Ew.
One such sailor, Richard Glasspool, fourth officer of the seized Marquis of Ely, told how he spent 4 months being forced to live off of rice and caterpillars in the rat-infested hold of a ship owned by MC.
Oh, I don't like that.
It's disgusting. Officer Glasspool goes on to detail the pirates' method of operation. The Chinese who were apprehended were faced with the grave option of either becoming pirates or being executed by flogging. Captured European sailors were made to participate in raids on settlements, during which the pirates gathered the heads of their victims, tied pairs of them together with their pigtails so that they could be worn around their necks as gory mementos.
Oh.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
And because of Glasspool's proficiency with firearms, MC employed him to man the cannons. The pirate chief was reported to have taken a special interest in Glasspool, believing that sprinkling him with garlic water before each battle would reduce the likelihood of him getting any injuries.
Oh, why, yes.
Yes. And prevent him from being attacked by a vampire. Right? They don't like garlic.
They don't like garlic. And I've heard there's a lot of vampire pirates.
You never know, man.
You never know.
During her reign, despite all of this, she ensured that farmers were paid and protected in exchange for food for her pirates. Which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So earlier, I talked about some rules that she made everybody adhere by. Okay. There were 3 primary rules and numerous ancillary ones. Comprised the Pirate Code, which shaped pirate sailors into a close-knit, highly disciplined, and difficult-to-beat group.
That is not how I pictured pirates being highly disciplined.
I know, but they were.
Okay.
The rules were as follows. Any pirate who issued instructions without authorization or disobeyed them would be immediately put to death.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Capital punishment was met out for robbing the public fund of goods or money taken by force or for invading settlements harboring pirates.
Okay.
All seized property, including cash and slaves, had to be shown for examination. The distribution of the prizes followed a prearranged plan.
Okay.
Which, fair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was strictly forbidden to rape or have sex with female captives.
Oh, Oh.
If they had the resources to sustain them and be faithful to them, pirates could marry attractive captives. Otherwise, they would either be released or ransomed.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I
And
like it.
death was the penalty for having intercourse with them or raping them.
Nice. This probably comes from her background, you know, where she grew up. I'm assuming she probably got raped a lot. And I think, wow,
I love
that's
that
really
rule.
forward of her. Like
Yeah.
really new age.
I know. It's amazing. I love it. Flogging, ironing, quartering, and mutilation were the penalties for a number of additional offenses. And this was basically only practiced on deserters. Several governments, including the powerful United Kingdom, have expressed their concerns about the actions of pirates from the Qingxi group, often known as the Red Flag Fleet, claiming that they were resolute in their attacks and would not back down when faced with overwhelming numbers of opponents or imminent capture. She kept her focus on the Canton region, which was still that coast's main trading hub, and she pillaged there successfully for a further 3 years. She destroyed Chinese naval fleets twice in July 1808 and 1809 when they were defending the river delta between Portuguese Macau and Canton. The Chinese admiral committed suicide after the first battle, which lasted 16 hours. The second strike, with both fleets stranded, called for greater creativity. Men obeyed. I think this is Poe. Men obeyed Poe's orders to swim to the Chinese ships and board them. So that's her lover. Then coastal communities were set on fire.
Oh.
This occurred in August at Sanshan when 80 villagers were put to death and their heads were displayed as a warning to others by being hung in a big tree near the coast. On Tao Sio Island, 1,000 civilians lost their lives in September. So a month later. During a protracted campaign of terror that saw the pirates approach Canton from a distance of only 16 miles or 25 kilometers, nearly 10,000 citizens were slaughtered. Not good.
Yeah, that's not great.
Even heavily equipped European warships were defeated in September 1809, and 2 Portuguese ships guarding Macau were among them. MC even caused trouble for several nations with the biggest naval fleets in the globe while ruling the biggest pirate fleet in human history. She had no answer from China, England, France, or any other nation interested in stopping pirate activities in the Chinese Sea, and military intervention was not an option. But in 1810, as her fleet began to wane and the pirate coalition split into 6 separate factions, she chose to seize the momentous chance presented by Qing Emperor Xie Kong. Complete royal pardons were granted to her and her lover, who she married, and they had a kid. So, like, not her lover anymore, but her husband, I guess. As long as her husband could command a portion of the Imperial Navy, she could keep her riches, and they were granted a palace. So she consented to retire.
Okay.
And I believe her pirates were able to keep their riches as well. So she basically made sure everybody was going to be okay.
Yeah.
So her lover, Chung Po, who went by the new name Xiong Po Sai, led the newly established governmental pirate hunting fleet and hunted down the remnants of the Red Flag Fleet until his untimely death. Meanwhile, MC went back to her native land and carried on with her life as the mistress of a local brothel and the organizer of several smuggling and gambling operations. And that is my quickie on Madame Cheng.
That's really interesting.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's funny how she was naughty, and by naughty I mean a mass murder. Mm-hmm. But then she still had those rules about women and stuff.
I know. I like that there was order to the chaos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, anyways, after all that,
thank you for that story. It was much better than mine.
Oh,
lighten the mood a bit.
Even though there was a lot of murder.
Yeah,
I know. Nah. I have some jokes to lighten the mood even further. So, I hope I do. My child was playing with my cards. Okay, I was like, that's stupid. And then I read it. It's good.
Okay.
My son blew up his chemistry set. I guess accidents do happen.
Stupid.
Pennies are a dime a dozen. Which I don't get.
No, because it's 12.
I know.
And a dime was 10.
I know. It makes no sense. That was stupid.
Kyle's going to come next week and be like, this is what it means. And we'll be like, oh, we're idiots.
Always. What did one goldfish say to the other goldfish in the tank?
I don't know what.
Any idea how to drive this thing? These are so dumb. Oh, it's a tank.
In a tank, yeah. It's so stupid.
What do you call a man with one rubber toe?
What?
Roberto.
A lot.
That was amazing. Okay, I'm done. That was good.
Well, I don't know if you guys have heard, but Congress just banned or disinvested or whatever the hell they're calling it, TikTok. So America, we got about 6 more months on TikTok, maybe a couple months after that. So we're probably not going to be on TikTok much longer. But if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon.
And YouTube sometimes.
And YouTube, yeah, when my Adobe's working.
And you can rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts because it really helps us get out there. And we really, really appreciate it.
Yes, please.
Please.
And thanks for tuning in. And we look forward to bringing you two new stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.